Before we begin, let me ask you something unsettling. What if an object you could touch, something solid, ordinary, and silent, carried a message from the dead so powerful that it reopened a closed case and forced the living to confront a crime they tried to bury? Not a rumor, not a legend, a real object, a real death, and a mystery that refused to stay quiet. Tonight's story isn't about special effects or made-up hauntings. It's about a single artifact that people swore was cursed, a message that seemed to come from beyond the grave, and how that message exposed one of the most chilling, unsolved crimes in American history. This is the true story of how a haunted artifact forced justice back into the light, and why, more than a century later, it still unsettles investigators, historians, and anyone who hears it. The year was 1897, and the place was Greenbrier County, West Virginia. Life here moved slowly. Communities were tight-knit, reputations mattered, and domestic violence, when it happened, was often hidden behind closed doors. On January 23rd of that year, a young woman named Zona Heaster was found dead in her home. She was just 23 years old. Her husband, Edward Shue, claimed he found her at the bottom of the stairs, lifeless. He said it was a tragic accident. No screams were reported. No witnesses came forward. And in a time when forensic science was barely in its infancy, authorities were quick to accept the explanation. But from the very beginning, something felt wrong. Edward Shue behaved strangely. He dressed Zona's body himself, choosing a high neck dress with a stiff collar and a scarf tied tightly around her throat. He refused to let anyone touch her neck. When the local doctor attempted an examination, Edward hovered anxiously, cradling Zona's head and sobbing uncontrollably. The doctor, visibly uncomfortable, performed only a superficial inspection. The official cause of death was listed as childbirth complications. Despite the fact that Zona was not pregnant, the case was closed almost as quickly as it began. But it didn't end there. Zona's mother, Mary Jane Heaster, was not convinced. She had never trusted Edward Shue. He was Zona's third husband, and neighbors whispered that he had a violent temper. Mary Jane believed in her bones that her daughter had been murdered, and she believed Zona would find a way to tell her. For 4 weeks after the funeral, Mary Jane claimed that Zona's spirit appeared to her every night. According to her sworn statements, the ghost told her exactly how she died. Edward, she said, had become enraged during an argument. He grabbed Zona by the neck and snapped it. Mary Jane didn't whisper this to neighbors. She didn't keep it to herself. She went straight to the local prosecutor and demanded the case be reopened. At first, she was dismissed. Ghost stories had no place in a courtroom. But Mary Jane was relentless. She repeated the details with eerie consistency: a broken neck, twisted vertebrae, violence hidden by clothing. Eventually, authorities agreed to exhume the body, not because they believed in ghosts, but because the original examination had been poorly conducted. What they found changed everything. During the autopsy, doctors discovered that Zona's neck was indeed broken. Her windpipe had been crushed. The injury was not consistent with a fall down the stairs. It was homicide. Edward Shue was arrested and charged with murder. At trial, the prosecution avoided mentioning ghosts directly. Instead, they focused on medical evidence, Edward's behavior, and his history of abuse. The defense, however, made a fatal mistake. They tried to discredit Mary Jane by portraying her as delusional, obsessed with visions of her daughter's ghost. That opened the door. Mary Jane took the stand and calmly recounted the apparitions. The courtroom listened in stunned silence as she described her daughter's spirit, the details of the murder, and the message that had driven her to seek justice. The jury was shaken. Edward Shue was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. But here's where the story takes its most unsettling turn. Years later, after Edward died behind bars, Mary Jane commissioned a tombstone for Zona. And this tombstone, the artifact at the heart of our story, was unlike any other. Carved into the stone was a poem, a public accusation, a permanent message that many believed carried the voice of the dead. The inscription described how Zona died, not by accident, not by illness, but by violence at the hands of her husband. It was as if the grave itself was speaking, refusing to let the truth be erased. Locals began calling it a haunted tombstone. People reported strange feelings when standing near it. Some claimed the air felt heavier. Others said they felt watched. Whether those sensations were psychological or not, one thing was undeniable: the tombstone kept the crime alive in public memory. And here's the most chilling part. Despite Edward's conviction, questions remained. Why was the original doctor so easily swayed? Why were early red flags ignored? And most haunting of all, how many similar cases were dismissed without a mother willing to fight so fiercely? In modern terms, the crime would likely have been solved immediately. Today, broken necks don't go unnoticed. But in 1897, it took a so-called haunted artifact, a gravestone accusing a killer, to expose the truth. Historians have since confirmed the medical findings. Court records verify the conviction. There is no evidence of fabrication. No hoax. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, the facts remain: a woman was murdered, justice was nearly denied, and a message associated with the dead forced the living to act. The tombstone still stands today. It has never been removed. It has never been altered. And it continues to draw visitors from around the world, not because it's spooky, but because it represents something far more disturbing. It represents how easily truth can be buried. This case is often labeled as folklore, but that label misses the point. There is nothing fictional about the death, the autopsy, the trial, or the conviction. The only question left unanswered is how Mary Jane knew what she knew. Was it intuition? Maternal instinct? Subconscious recognition of signs others ignored? Or something else entirely? The haunted artifact, the tombstone, didn't solve the crime on its own. But it ensured the story could never be rewritten. It locked the truth in stone, forcing every future visitor to confront a murder that society once tried to explain away. And that's what makes this case so powerful. Not the ghost, not the legend, but the reminder that sometimes the most frightening thing isn't the idea of the dead speaking, it's how often the living choose not to listen. If you found this story compelling, unsettling, or thought-provoking, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that history still has secrets, and sometimes they're hiding in plain sight. Turn on notifications so you don't miss our next deep dive into real mysteries that refuse to stay buried. Thanks for watching, and stay curious.